Okay, so let's welcome Narendra talking about clarity.
All right, hello everyone, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Microsoft Clarity and how we've fallen in love with ClickHouse. I am gonna, sorry, as you can see, I'm a pro at this. So we're gonna talk about what Microsoft Clarity is, what we offer. It's a free service. So the first thing that I want everyone to remember that Microsoft Clarity is free and it's gonna stay free forever. So it's not like a play to get you in and then charge you, right? This is a tool that we've developed to democratize insights for all the web properties out there. So who are our customers? Our customers are people who own a website, who like to know more about a website, who'd like to take the decisions that big companies take by looking at lots and lots of data, but they don't have so much money or resource to invest in a data science team, in an instrumentation team, and build models on top of it. So we are taking the learnings that we have gained over years of experience while working on big web properties and solve two problems for website owners. I'll call them webmasters from now on. One, they don't need to invest in instrumentation pipelines, big data pipelines, deal with all of that. Second, the end product of all this instrumentation and all these data pipelines is what? It's basically you want to gain some insights that make your business better. So we alleviate the need for small websites, big websites to build an instrumentation pipeline, a big data pipeline. We do it for you. We do it for free. Second, we give you insights on a website of our own. So if you go to clarity.microsoft.com, there are easy steps for you to download a little JavaScript bundle that you put on your site. That's it. Within 30 minutes, you will start seeing data flowing onto the dashboard that we have dedicated to your site. You can take a look at that dashboard. You can see three things. You can see session recordings. What do I mean by a session? You can see a user log on to your site, go from page 1 to page 2, then bounce off. You can see things like heat maps for free. You can see scroll maps. Then you can gain deeper insights by looking at our dashboard, where we will tell you, so many of your web pages, so many of the users experienced a JavaScript error, or so many of the clicks on your page are not working in a certain market. These are not easy things for for a small site manager to extract. So basically, we give you some stuff which is right off the bat a DSAT that you should fix right away. Or we can tell you things like, do you know that people who use Apple Pay end up buying 25% more stuff than people who don't use Apple Pay, right? So it's got consequences at different levels of abstraction. From it can help a developer, it can help a UX designer, whether this form of a text box is better than that, or it can help the big decision makers as to say, should we even invest in paying by crypto if nobody's buying it, right? So these are kind of live demo sites. On the left, you're seeing a user select a session, and this is what so let's clarify this. On the left, you are seeing a webmaster who's the owner of a website looking at what's happening on their site. They click on one of the sessions here, and they can see their end user's interaction. So for the example, I'm showing you Clarity on Clarity dashboard, right? So imagine if this was your site, you would see people come in, log in by some mechanism, and then interact with your homepage. So it doesn't just stop there. You can see we have durations, We have events here. You can see this is where the click happened. You can go directly to those places, and this is for free. So all the sessions, none of them are sampled. You get all the data coming in, and you can see what's happening on your site. So we do realize that even if you have 200 sessions on your site, it's just going to be too much for you to sit down and binge watch people on your site. So we tried to aggregate a bunch of those sessions into an insight that we can show you on a picture, right? Which is basically called a heat map. We didn't invent heat maps, but we give you heat maps here without you having to invest in the data pipeline, in the instrumentation, in the code or the logic to generate this. So you can see this is the heat map for when people go to clarity.microsoft.com, their interactions, whether people like clicking this button more, how many people scroll. We have different types of heat maps. We have click-based heat maps. We have scroll-based heat maps. We have area-based heat maps. And finally, this is the last of the introduction slides. We have a dashboard where we can collect all these insights and stop you from looking at one session at a time or looking at heat maps, where we give you ideas like this is your device traffic, and by the way, you have 5.6% sessions have dead clicks. That means people are clicking on something on a page somewhere which isn't working. Imagine if you were the web developer there, and if I showed you directly without you having to do any instrumentation where the gaps are, where you can make improvements. This is immediate improvement to your site, right? So if you're interested in this, this is free. I'll say once again, clarity.microsoft.com is where you need to go. All right, so now we are here to talk about ClickHouse, so I'm going to talk about big data. It's a cliche term, but we really are a big data platform. We deal with the good stuff that comes with big data, but also all the challenges that come with big data. I'm going to talk about our scale just to give you perspective of what we are dealing with. Clarity has been alive for a year and a half. We get billions of page views from across the web that are coming into our big data pipeline. We are talking about petabytes of data, right? Millions of websites and hundreds of millions of users a day, right? So it works for a lot of companies across the web, and the scale is pretty massive, right? And I've worked on Bing and MSN in the past, so I'm used to scale like this, but all internal. But now this data is coming from lots of different small and big sites across the web. So we've used our learnings, our experience, not just on the instrumentation side, not just on creating big data pipelines, but also privacy, auth, etc. Right? We are GDPR compliant. So we looked at a bunch of things. We evaluated a lot of open source technologies. Contrary to the popular belief, it's not that we make everything in our backyard and then start. We looked at a lot of open source technologies. We looked at a lot of internal technologies. We did a bunch of performance test rounds on the amount of data we are going to deal with. So please remember, even though you as a website manager, let's just put you in the shoes of a website owner, you don't have to do too much work other than go to clarity.com, provision your project, download some JavaScript onto your site. There's a lot of work that's happening behind the scenes. If you open your network tab on the browser while Clarity is on your site, you will see that at regular intervals, it is pinging something back to our servers, which is giving us information, which is basically a JavaScript initiator for all the events that we think are useful that we want to capture, right? So needless to say, there is a huge amount of incoming traffic which is inserting lots of data in our ClickHouse clusters. And at the same time, there are lots of people who are going to clarity.microsoft.com and looking at what happened at my site today. So even if they look at just one heat map, that heat map is created over an aggregation of all their page views. So a simple operation like looking at a heat map is basically a big query. And this is happening while lots of data is being ingested at the very same time. So we looked at a lot of these options out there. We had good relationship with Alexei. We had lots of meetings with him as well. And then we realized that yes, ClickHouse is the stuff that we're going to bet on. However, there were a few conditions to that bet. One of them was the BCP side of things, where we needed backup, and we are not going to go and this was done like a couple of years ago. So at that time, not a lot of BCP options were available out of the box from ClickHouse. And of course, we have this thing that we've invested a huge amount of time and money to build stuff on Azure, right? Which is not something that was the first thing that ClickHouse offered out of the box. So we did have to keep those things in mind. And the challenge that I like to, we faced a few challenges here and there, but the challenge which was most meaty that I want to talk about is our, well, let me talk about this in a second. We're going to talk about backup and recovery specifically on Azure, right? And we are confident that this process that we've put in place can be leveraged by any other team, internal Microsoft or outside, who wants to get efficient, robust, application consistent backups without any downtime. All right. So if you have any questions, if you're considering ClickHouse and if you're on Azure, feel free to drop a line to clarity-team@microsoft.com. We'll be happy to share what processes we followed, what challenges we face. I'm going to talk about a few of them right now. Just want to go back to the architecture slide. As I said, millions of rows of data are coming in through this side, the ingestion side, and thousands of queries are happening at the consumption side at the same time, right? This is a reasonably accurate representation of what our system architecture and deployment looks like. I want to call out a few things. We talk to ClickHouse using an ingestion service that we've built, and for the consumption side, we have an access library that we have built primarily for two cases. One is for co-location of queries that, if I am a website, abc.com, I am, given a proximity bias towards a certain data center, and most of the queries that I issue for that site will go there. That's one job of the ingestion service and the data access library. The other one is we need to ensure that people with the right access only have to see the data. Now you can imagine in one of these clusters there is data from site A.com and site B.com. We don't want at any point in time any spillage, any leakage, so we don't directly talk to ClickHouse. We talk through our endpoints. All right, so let's talk about this. Again, I have talked about this. We want it efficient. We want the backup to work while the ingestion is still going on. And we are not talking about a few records a second. We are talking about millions of records. So that's one of the challenges. We need to create backups. We need to do restoration. We need to have a BCP plan in place. We are geo-distributed. At the same time, we are ingesting millions of rows. So how do we deal with that? Some of that, because it was done a while ago, a lot more support is available in ClickHouse now. That wasn't a couple of years ago. So some of that we have to build, which we are now looking at what can we replace with something that's already out of the box in ClickHouse, right? So we are aware that now a bunch of this is supported by ClickHouse, but on AWS. Which unfortunately not going to work for us right now. So this is still something that, according to us on Azure, is state of the art. All the stuff, I don't like saying cliches over again, but has to be efficient. But I said what I wanted to. So there are two concepts here, right, that we want to talk about quickly. We'll talk about the concept of parts, and we'll talk about a fantastic feature on Azure, which is called incremental snapshots, right? So as you know, in ClickHouse, parts are immutable. What we try to do is ClickHouse stores data actually in parts, right? And then it takes smaller parts and merges it into a bigger one to optimize querying, etc., and data management. So we realize that there's this concept of parts. We know that swapping one pod to another doesn't require data transfer. It's a pointer manipulation, so it is atomic. We leverage that. And the other part and the other concept that I want to introduce is, if you're not aware, Azure has this thing where it can take incremental snapshots of your disks. Right? So again, we're going to talk about backup while ingestion is still going on. And what I want to show in this diagram is, if you look at the disk is on the top, and that's the incremental snapshot. The first snapshot is the entire disk. The second snapshot is only the data that was modified since the first snapshot. So this incremental snapshot is a lot more cost effective than the original snapshots that Azure was offering. So we leverage these two things. This is our flow for backups from left to right. We're going to start, assume, very simple scenario. We have 3 parts. First thing we do is use the ClickHouse commands freeze. We use sync. Sync, if you're on Linux, that you have to make your cache and disk synchronize. That's what we do that for. Then we do freeze. What freeze basically does is creates hard links to all the parts that you have. Then if there is more data and there is some ingestion that happens and ClickHouse thinks that, oh, part 1 and part 2 can be merged into part 4 for faster access, the shadow parts, the hard links still exist, right? So we can work off of that. Then even though ingestion and consumption is happening on these parts, the hard links for these are maintained. And then we run a clear shadow. This command creates hard links and moves them to a separate folder. And then once we say clear shadow, then this cluster does not care about the old hard links. That's moved to a different folder, and we can utilize that for a backup. And then on the side of restore, we use Azure snapshots to first create snapshots of the disks, spin up full-fledged cluster. So we create a new cluster. On that new cluster, we start the restoration of schema. We attach the shadow parts that we saved during the backup. To take you back here, these are all the shadow parts that we had. We copied them to a folder. We took a snapshot. We spun off a new cluster, associated a schema with it, and then pointed it to the hard links that we had stored from the backup. Right? Once that's there, then we let ClickHouse copy over the data from the original to the replicas in each cluster. Right? This process for a single layer meaning cluster here, takes about 30 minutes. And then for all the replicas within a cluster, which are in some cases 3, in some cases 4, we can achieve this within 60 minutes. So there's a lot of optimization that went into this. But having said all of that, if you keep this to a place, if you keep this to a state where you tested this once, and now you're waiting for something bad to happen, and then you're going to spin up a new cluster, and then you're going to restore, that's not advisable. So we kind of simulate some sort of an issue. Like, let's say something happened. You need to keep on testing your restore and backup process. So we invested in automated validation. Every few days, we spin up a new cluster. We assume something is broken. We restore. We measure the time, how long it takes. We don't want the time window to change just because the data is growing or we add a new cluster. And then we run automated tests on our validation suite on the restore. Once that is done, then we can either purge the cluster or switch traffic to it. So once again, I went over a few things. I introduced you to Clarity. I introduced you to the scale, gave you an idea about our architecture. And I shared the main thing that we have is lots of data is coming in all the time. And out-of-the-box solution was not there when we made this, and shared how we use incremental Azure snapshots, how we use freeze and part optimization that comes with ClickHouse to get something set up where the downtime is minimal and there is almost no data loss if there is an event which actually messes with one complete data center at a time, right? Would you want to say the final word? Okay, that's all I have from Clarity side. We will take questions together at the end or now? At the end, okay. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll just end it with the final thank you again. So hopefully you got a glimpse of some of the cool work we do in WebXT across Edge, Bing, MSN, and more, as well as how this data savvy org is able to build really cool solutions, leveraging best of both worlds, which I mean like both Microsoft technologies and third party and open source, and ClickHouse being a very central part of it. So thank you so much. And we definitely have more requirements. Maybe for time, I'll just mention one or two things here quickly. So definitely, as we put data, right? Like we put Bing data, we put MSN data, but they both use the same anonymized user ID, right? But then people want to do cross analysis. How many people use Bing and MSN or both, or both? So then ClickHouse by default is not great for joins, so we have to create one more cooked data set, right? So we keep on doing a lot more cooked data sets. So we would love to have some sort of join solution, at least in the same cluster and stuff like that, right? And again, like deletion is another thing that's like, not only for GDPR, there are a lot of other reasons why we want a faster delete. Similarly, like, getting data going up and running as we restructure clusters, things up and moving, there's a lot we could use help. Anyway, not to just to kind of, but the key point is, yeah, we really love ClickHouse and we hope to have more continued collaboration for years to come. Thank you so much.